friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa Stringworks Workshop. I thought I'd share what I would call a mini project with you. These are little things that I do quite often here in the shop, and I rarely ever show any of them. But today we're building a little rotation machine. You saw in my previous video where I made my oil varnish. And I don't want to give too much away, but let's just say this. I'm very pleased with the oil varnish. I won't go any further than that. But there's been a lot of suggestions, and Carlos, who has sent me some nice things over the years and some instruments and different things, suggested that I put a UV lamp on there, and a couple of other folks suggested that as well. And in fact, I had actually seen it even prior to the suggestions. I had seen it on some different forums and, checking about oil varnishes and making them dry faster and things. So lots of folks, in other words, suggested putting UV lights on it or hanging it out in the sun. Well, hanging out in the sun here is probably not a real good idea. So I do happen to have a UV light, which I bought for curing some of that Solarex finish, which, to be honest, I haven't really tested very well yet. But regardless, we have a mini project. So I needed to build a rotation device that would rotate an instrument hanging up to dry with oil varnish on it in front of the UV light. So how am I going to build that? Well, it just so happened that I happen to have this weird bracket, which I think had, well, I don't know, it was some heavy-duty thing that sat on this. This is a very heavy-duty bracket. And I started modifying this off camera already. This bolt stood up much higher, and there was a tab here that came up, and there was no hole through here. I've already drilled a hole right through here. And why did I do that? Well, I need a way to mount this little 1 RPM motor. I obtained this 1 RPM motor from McMaster Car. I bought it there. And so now I can find a way to mount this on here, have the shaft coming through down here where my finger is, and that shaft will rotate at 1 RPM. This will be hanging on the wall. The instrument will be hanging here. I may have to extend this down so that the instrument doesn't hit this, but one way or the other, we're going to extend this down and have it where it will rotate an instrument. I'm finding this little rotary file here, if you want to call it that. It's just a small, tiny belt sander that was sent to me by Colin from the UK, and I find that very helpful for a lot of projects, especially this project right here. I use that to deburr everything, just to get rid of all the sharpness that when I drilled through there was, sharp metal, and I cut this off, there was sharp metal. Alright, so now we have a way to mount something. We can mount the motor here. The motor has threaded holes through here. I need to find out what bolts fit that, and then maybe make a little spacer here because this still sticks up, and so I need a little spacer, and this also sticks up. So I need some sort of a spacer where I can mount this down like this, and that's what we're going to build next. I may just build that out of wood. It doesn't need to be anything special, and wood would be faster and easier for me to work with. I've made myself a little spacer block here, and get ready to drill a 7/8 inch hole, which should be big enough to pass that little protrusion on that motor through this. Alright, so the spacer block fits on there really nice, and in fact I think I'll just set it like this. That's to square it up, and then I'm just going to knock off these corners of the block just because that will make it fit this motor a little bit better. So we'll go over to the sander and fix that. Well, I've got a couple of holes made where the motor can mount. I'm going to stick this on here. It just so happens that these two holes line up with the two holes that are in this, and it puts it just exactly where I want it. Just couldn't hardly beat that. But this is a big nub, and I'm going to have to dish out a spot under here so that that nub can go up in there. Here's some carbon paper. I'm hoping that that will mark the nub well enough. Don't know if it will for sure or not. Gives me something to shoot for, but I don't think it's perfect. But you know, I'm going to knock out a pretty big area there, so it's not a big deal. Could probably even do it with the sander, but I think I'll just go use the drill press and a Forstner bit and knock it out there. As it turns out, these holes are just a hair too far apart, and I mean just a little bit. So I'm just going to take a file and move them a little closer together. If it didn't take so long, I'd just take it over to the milling machine, but that takes too long. Looks like the problem might be more with my wooden spacer too. May have to work on that some. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to work on the spacer a little bit too. Well, that ought to work, doggone it. It's just playing hard to get because we're on camera, that's all. Alright, so let me see if these holes on the front are even close to being lined up. I have a feeling they won't be either. Actually, they're pretty close. Now they just go through the wood, but that's okay. If they work, that's okay. And so far they don't. I'll probably have to take this all apart again when I make my adapter here for the hook. I just want to get this part working first so I know it works. I might as well just go ahead and make my adapter for the motor before I fasten it all down real tight. I've stacked up a bunch of blocks here to get the motor at the right height so that that shaft will be sitting on this block when I drill through it. I need a hole through it. I don't want to just screw something on here and have that screw hold it. I want to be able to go all the way through it with a pin because I don't want to take the risk of dropping an instrument just because a screw came loose or something. And of course, as my luck would have it, it looks like this is hardened because that bit's not even touching it. Well, I sharpened the bit the best I could by eye, and we'll try it again. It's not even putting a dent in it. That's unusual. You wouldn't think a shaft of a motor would be hard like that. Boy, it's hard as a brick. Doggone it. Well, I guess I'm going to have to back up and use the set screw. That's the only option it looks like I'm going to have. This was a socket head cap screw that I turned down on my lathe, and you know, that way I could drill a hole the size of the motor shaft and have a lot of material to put threads in so I could crank down on that shaft really tight because I don't want to lose this thing off the end. So now I'm just going to drill a cross hole here, and then we're going to thread it eventually with a 1032 bolt. So I'm just getting it lined up here by eye. Got right to the edge of going through and then it's balking on me. Have to re-sharpen the bit. Just can't win on this thing. Well, I sharpened the bit by hand. I don't know if that's going to be good enough in this case or not. Well, I just more or less forced it through. Now let's see if we can even thread the darn thing. I kind of wanted this, you know, hard steel because I want to put threads in there that aren't going to strip out. I want to crank this thing down so I don't lose it off the end of that shaft. Oh well, it's not easy being me. Well, I'd like to tell you making that little piece was really easy, and it should have been, but every single thing fought me. My cutters on my lathe weren't very sharp. I don't know, just couldn't get nothing to work. This is a hard bolt, so you know it's extra hard. I didn't mind the fact that it was hard because I wanted it to, you know, have good threads that I could tighten down real well. But I don't know. I tell you, it just seems like you just can't win sometimes. That's pretty tight. Okay, so now I just need to drill a hole through this, which that may not be easy to do either, and then that way I can put a hook on there and hang the mandolin from that. Oh my goodness, how complicated does it have to be? I couldn't even get a drill bit to make a dent in this, not even a dent. Well, I'm going to try drilling through this. I haven't had much luck drilling this stuff. Success! Yeah, I know it was spinning a little fast. I understand that. I know that for sure, but sometimes you do what you got to do. It worked, and that's all I care about. It went pretty much right through the dead center, which is what I was going for. I just did it by eye. And now we'll clean that up and make the next little part that we need, and I think we're finished. Well, this has not been easy, I gotta tell you. Everything on this has fought me. Maybe that's a sign I'm not supposed to do this. I don't know. It's just been crazy. Well, even with the air on, I think you'll be able to tell that it's working. So I don't have the ground hooked up right at the moment. I'll hook that up in a minute. But there you go. You can see the fan is spinning. You can see that this is turning, but it's turning very slow, 1 RPM per minute. So it's working really well. That's exactly what I want. Now I'll hang a hook off of here to hang the mandolin on, or an instrument, any instrument, guitar or anything. And now I've got an extra ground wire here. I can hook that ground wire up to the base here, and in fact there's an extra hole here. I'll just put a little screw and nut right here. There you can see I hooked the ground up, just because I know people are always concerned about that kind of thing. And now what I'm going to do is just tape these wires together. Just taping them up so that they won't get in the way of something. So that'll make a nice, neat installation with this taped off here. These wires can't get in the way of anything, and everything looks nice. So yeah, we could make a cover for this. This brackets here, I guess, could make a cover. I don't know why it didn't come with a cover, but on the other hand, I don't know that I want a cover, because I like the fact that this air is blowing over this motor to keep it cool, and that air moving will move down over the instrument too. So I think it's a perfect thing. I'm going to leave it like that. You can see I've got it hanging and it's working, all put together. I hung it with this long extension here to keep it away from all that. This is my normal hook that I normally use, and just hooked it into another piece of steel. This is a pretty strong piece of steel. It's bigger than 1/8 of an inch, so it's strong. And you can see the whole thing there is spinning and rotating. Over here you can see I have the infrared lamp shining across on it. But you really aren't supposed to see this mandolin yet, because it's a surprise.